Quite the opposite of what the Queen described some years ago as an anus horribilis. In other words, I've just had a wonderful year. See, it all began when Dr. Sutterby, my then podiatrist, dropped a bit of a bombshell. "I'm retiring, Mr. Fawcett," he exclaims. "I'm afraid this is going to have to be our last encounter. But fear not, for I have found you a tremendous replacement. Her name is Mrs. Dunderdale." A woman? In podiatry? Isn't that so unusual? "It's progress, Mr. Fawcett. Now allow me to shake hands with your feet." So the next thing I knew, I was ringing Mrs. Dunderdale's doorbell for our first appointment. Ding! And when I opened that door, whoosh, I was completely bowled over. Beautiful looking woman, 70 odd with lovely flowing hair. Immediately she guided me down to a chair, resting my feet upon a large silk handkerchief, which I thought was a civilized touch. "Well, Mr. Fawcett, I take one look at those feet and I say to myself, now here is a man who's on his feet a great deal. Am I right?" I said. "You most certainly are, Mrs. Dunderdale. I'm in charge of a soft furnishings department at the Tyson Robinsons. Or was, until my wife passed away." "Well, as soon as you walked in, I picked you out as a professional man." I said, "Well, I prefer a conservative approach to fashion. Preppy, but classic." And then she said something that startled even me. "Do you know why I got into the profession of podiatry, Mr. Fawcett? So I could kneel at the feet of thousands of men and my husband wouldn't raise a hand." I said, oh, is there a Mr. Dunderdale?" "There was, but much like your wife, he's passed over." She had on a lovely cardigan, though. I just had to inquire. "Say, is that cardigan, I don't know, cashmere?" "Well spotted, Mr. Fawcett. Now, if you're really good, I shall introduce you into the world of the metatarsal art." At our next appointment, she says to me, "Good news, Mr. Fawcett. We seem to have cracked the tinea podias. Not a trace of it left. I think this calls for a sherry refill. Are you off into a hurry?" I said, No, of course not." "Why?" "Well, we still have a little bit of time on our hands, and I was wondering if I could prevail you to try on a pair of booties. Think them as a present for you, Mr. Fawcett." I said, "I could not possibly accept Mrs. Dunderdale." "Well, there is something you could do for me. See, years of bending over men's feet have resulted in an intimately painful condition of my lower back, which I'm sure you have the power to alleviate." I said, "I do, Mrs. Dunderdale?" "Yes, you do, Mr. Fawcett. Now, I'm going to place one pillow here for my head and one pillow here for my abdomen. I'm going to slowly lie down, and I want you to step on my lower back. Shall I take the booties off, Mrs. Dunderdale?" No. Keep the booties on. Their texture makes them ideal for the purpose." Oh, that's it, Mr. Fawcett, that's it. "I'm anxious not to hurt you, Mrs. Dunderdale. Have no worry in that regard. Trample away." I said, "I feel like one of those French peasants treading on all those grapes," and she goes, Yes, that's it, Mr. Fawcett, yes, that's it." Our next appointment takes on a very similar tone. She sits me down in her study, pours me the glass of sherry, and says, "May I make a suggestion? How would you like all of your appointments now to be completely free? How would you like that arrangement?" I said, "Come again?" "That's right. No charge at all." At one point I suggested to Mrs. Dunderdale people may find this situation peculiar, particularly in this small town. Well, people would be wrong. See, you and I are enthusiasts, Mr. Fozzard, and there isn't just enough enthusiasm in the world these days. Now, those Wellingtons are awfully comfy. I would like you, very gently, in your own time, lightly, to mark the time on my bottom. But it's always the same now. Well, occasionally she'll put on some music. But it's such a droll, and if I want so much as a basic foot alignment, I really have to nail her down. Which I confess, she quite likes.
No.
We're still Mr. Fozzard and Mrs. Dunderdale. I haven't told anyone at work yet, learnt my lesson there. Anyway, people keep saying how well I look these days. I suppose there's a word for what we're doing, but I like to just skirt around it.